Cheryl Ann Kenney was born on July 8, 1960. By the age of 30, she and her husband, Walter James Kenney, were living in Nevada, Missouri, with her 2 children and 2 stepchildren. Tragically, she would disappear in early 1991 after a night at work. On the evening of February 27th, Cheryl was working her shift at the Quality Convenience Store on Business 71 Highway. She typically worked until midnight, but whenever it was a slow night, she was allowed to close early, and that's exactly what she did at 10 p.m. She then brought items in from outside, secured the ice machine and restrooms on the west side of the building, checked the gas pumps, and then returned inside and set the store's alarm at 10:17 p.m. What happened after that remains unknown. Lowell Holst, Jr., the man responsible for maintenance and cleaning at the store, told officers that while he was there earlier, he saw 1 or 2 men enter the business, but didn't recognize either of them. This wasn't unusual, as the store was located next to several hotels and saw its fair share of walk-in customers. When Halsey left a few minutes before closing, he said there were no customers' cars in the parking lot, though 1 unknown male customer was still inside the store. When she failed to return home, Walter, who'd been dealing with a back injury at the time, rode his motorcycle to the store to check on her, arriving at around 10:30 p.m. Once there, all he found was her car in the parking lot, but no signs of Cheryl. He checked with nearby family members and other locations, but no one had seen or heard from her, and at around 2 a.m., he called the Nevada Police Department and reported her missing. At daybreak, a formal search got underway, but no trace of Cheryl was ever found. Her disappearance is often discussed alongside 2 other Missouri cases from the same time period. The first case is Trudy Darby, who disappeared from her job at a convenience store in Max Creek on January 19, 1991, and was later found murdered in the Little Niangua River. Half-brothers Jesse Rush and Marvin Cheney were later convicted for the crime. The second case involved Angela Hammond, who was abducted from a payphone in Clinton, Missouri, on April 4, 1991, while speaking to her boyfriend. She was pregnant and has never been found. While there are similarities in circumstances, there is no hard evidence linking Cheryl's case to either of them. Cheryl stood 5 foot 7 inches with light brown hair, bleached blonde, and green eyes. She wore eyeglasses with tan frames, had a unique tooth pattern, scars from mole removal on her chest and upper left arm, and a scar on her wrist. While there are no dental records available, her DNA is on file. If you have any information about the disappearance of Cheryl Ann Kenney, please call the Nevada Police Department at 417-448-2710 or call the TIPS hotline at 417-448-5117. Cheryl went missing on February 27, 1991, and as of January 2026, she remains missing, and this case remains unsolved. John Phillip Dudding, who went by JP, was born on January 11, 1965. By the age of 58, he was living alone in Willow Springs, Missouri, and was described as a hardworking, down-to-earth individual who was very loved in the Clear Springs community. Unfortunately, he would go missing on January 28, 2023, in Willow Springs, Missouri, and has never been heard from again. That same day, a family friend contacted JP's son, Blaze, saying something felt wrong, so Blaze went to his father's home on Varville Road and immediately noticed signs of concern. JP's truck was parked outside with the driver's side door open, the front door covered in soot, and upon entering, he discovered the shower running inside the home. It was determined that a small fire had been set inside, but it didn't destroy the home. As for JP, he was nowhere to be found. All his belongings were still inside, including his cell phone, wallet, and a backpack he reportedly carried everywhere and always kept packed with clothes. They also found his horse still on the property. JP was a horse farrier, which is someone who specializes in hoof care. Investigators later noted that JP's white pickup truck was parked on the property but was out of gas and had a dead battery. Despite these unusual circumstances, foul play was initially not suspected, and the home, was not secured as a crime scene. Multiple civilians were allowed to enter and search the home before evidence could be properly documented. Friends and family have since criticized the early handling of the case, saying the Texas County Sheriff's Department didn't tape off the home or fully process the truck, which might have resulted in the loss of crucial evidence. Coordinated searches were done by multiple agencies, but no sign of him was ever found. There's now a $7,500 cash reward being offered to any non-anonymous person who provides information leading to the discovery of JP's remains or the arrest and conviction of the person or persons responsible for his disappearance. JP stood 5 foot 9 inches, had graying brown hair, and blue eyes. If you have any information about his disappearance, please call the Texas County Sheriff's Office at 417-967-4165 or the non-law enforcement tip line at 619-992-8682. John Phillip Dudding went missing on January 28, 2023, and as of January 2026, he remains missing, and this case remains unsolved. Kennedy Walton was the oldest of 3 daughters born to Jax Dean. She grew up in Belleville, Illinois, and was especially close to her mother and younger sisters. Those who knew her well described Kennedy as a gentle soul. By the age of 26, she was living on the south side of St. Louis, Missouri, with 2 roommates. The apartment was located about 25 miles from Belleville, where she grew up, and unfortunately, she would disappear in March of 2022 after a trip back there. Around this time, Kennedy's car had broken down, and she was relying on family members to get around. On March 3, 2022, her aunt, Jen Slack, picked her up from the Swansea Metrolink station around noon and drove her to St. Elizabeth's Hospital to get her mother's truck. Her mother, Jax Dean, was at the hospital having a procedure, and Kennedy had come into town to help take care of her and her sisters. She planned to watch them and take them swimming while their mother recovered. That evening, Kennedy picked her mother, Jax, up from the hospital and arrived back at her mother's home at around 9:30 p.m. While Jax was taking a shower and preparing for bed, Kennedy left the home in her mother's white 2007 Chevy Tahoe without saying a word. Jax then went to bed, believing her daughter was still there. However, she'd gone to the Show Me Sports Bar and Grill in St. Charles, Missouri, to meet with friends for a birthday celebration. Surveillance showed her there with friends, eating and drinking until about 1:10 a.m., when she abruptly got up and walked out to her vehicle. A male friend left the bar not far behind and found Kennedy in her vehicle crying. When asked what was wrong, she didn't elaborate and instead told him she'd be fine and that nothing was wrong. Because she waited in her car before leaving, her friends had also finished up and they all left at around the same time. Once on the highway, they were side by side, but Kennedy never acknowledged them and then suddenly sped off erratically. Concerned, her friends drove by her apartment and were surprised to see Kennedy's vehicle already leaving. Tragically, after that, no one ever saw or heard from her again. When Jax woke up and learned her daughter wasn't there, she sent her a text and got a response that she'd be home in a minute. So she waited, but when there was still no sign of her by 2 a.m., she texted again, but this time received no response. Jax waited until morning, believing her daughter would eventually show up, especially considering she had promised to help get her sisters ready for school. However, when morning came and went, and there was still no sign of her, she called the Belleville Police Department and reported her missing. Investigators questioned one of Kennedy's roommates, who said he last saw her around 1 a.m. at Show Me Sports Bar and Grill during the birthday gathering. 6 days later, on March 10th, Jack's white Chevrolet Tahoe was found abandoned in St. Louis, approximately 2 miles from Kennedy's apartment. Police said the vehicle showed no damage, and there was nothing immediately suspicious about its location. However, Jax reported that several items were missing from inside the truck, and a neighbor reported seeing a man park the vehicle and walk away. Investigators also discovered that Kennedy's cell phone was turned off around noon that day and has never been turned back on. Her family wonders if she might have been a victim of sex trafficking, but investigators have not said whether or not there is any truth to this. There are also rumors that she fled to Florida and is now working at a beauty salon there. That's most likely because of a photo from a spa in Orlando, Florida that was posted on Instagram. The woman's face bears a striking resemblance to Kennedy's. What do y'all think? Let me know in the comments below. Kennedy Walton stood between 5 foot 10 inches and 5 foot 11 and was wearing all black clothes when she was last seen. If you have any information about her disappearance, please call the Belleville Police Tip Line at 618-355-8686. Kennedy was last seen on March 4th, 2022, and as of January 2026, she remains missing, and this case remains unsolved. Sarah Elizabeth Burton was born on February 22, 1990, and grew up in Joplin, Missouri. She attended Joplin High School, and by the age of 28, she and her 2 sons were living with her parents. Tragically, in July of 2018, Sarah strangely disappeared. In high school, Sarah had been a good student and was placed in a gifted program, and was also a cheerleader. Unfortunately, after graduation, she got addicted to methamphetamine, and in 2010, she served time in prison for drug charges. After her release, she tried to turn her life around, but continued to battle addiction and had a problematic relationship with the father of one of her 2 young sons. By 2018, she was once again in trouble and had charges pending for drug possession, trafficking in stolen identities, and stealing a motor vehicle. Despite these charges, she was making all her court appearances, and her attorney believed she might be able to get a suspended sentence. On July 8, 2018, her parents, Ron and Stephanie, helped her buy a Dodge Durango SUV and put the tags on it. That night, she left their house, saying she planned to return the next morning, but she never did, and her parents never saw her again. That's mainly because she wrecked the SUV 3 days later in Pittsburgh, Kansas, and began avoiding her parents. After the wreck, Sarah spent time with her friend Lacey until July 15th, when she dropped Sarah off in an alley near 13th Street. The following morning, on July 16th, Sarah and a friend were out shopping on South Rangeline Road when Sarah asked to be dropped off at East 10th Street and Rex Avenue. She told the friend she was going to walk home from there, which was almost 2 miles away, but she never made it. Later that day, she was seen at a home in Northwest Joplin. If it really was her, that's possibly the last sighting. A few days after going missing, the friend who dropped Sarah off on 16th found Sarah's purse and 1 shoe in her car that she had left behind. She'd taken her shoes off in the car because she had bought new ones that day from Payless. The friend allegedly didn't even realize Sarah was missing until she called Sarah's parents to return the items. Sarah was then reported missing on July 20th. At one point, someone messaged Sarah's mother, Stephanie, with a photo of keys found on the railroad tracks on 10th Street, which they believed were the keys to the Dodge Durango SUV. The father of one of her sons, Brian Thorpe, who also goes by Brian Lee, was incarcerated at St. Joe Prison when Sarah disappeared and is not considered a suspect. However, according to her loved ones, he put Sarah through hell during their relationship, shot her, then threatened her before he went to prison. He's since been released. On July 13th, 3 days before she went missing, Cliff Traywin posted a message on Sarah's Facebook page, threatening her and accusing her of stealing his wallet. Since her disappearance, multiple properties and even a pond have been searched. In April 2019, new leads led investigators to a property in Newton County, Missouri, where several agencies executed a drug search warrant. Credible information received by the Joplin Police Department prompted authorities to conduct a thorough search of the property, including its outbuildings, using search and rescue dogs. Newton County Sheriff Chris Jennings confirmed that items were removed from the property during the search, although he did not disclose their nature or connection to the case. After searching the home, investigators returned to the property and began searching a pond with divers and search and rescue dogs. Around that time, Newton County Sheriff Chris Jennings noted that no definitive evidence had been found in the pond. Sarah Burton stood 5 foot 7 inches with long brown hair and blue eyes. If you have any information regarding her disappearance, no matter how trivial it may seem, please call the Joplin Police Department at 417-623-3131, extension 440 for tips. There is a cash reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of those responsible for her disappearance. Sarah was last seen on July 16, 2018, and as of January 2026, she remains missing, and this case remains unsolved. Shemika Keyanta Cosey, who went by Mika, was born on October 1, 1992. She grew up in the St. Louis area and primarily lived with her mother, Paula Hill. She had family nearby, including cousins and an aunt she often spent time with. Her mother described her as an independent, curious, and social individual who occasionally pushed boundaries and made poor decisions. Just after Christmas, on December 28, 2008, 16-year-old Mika visited her aunt's home in Berkeley, Missouri. She and her cousins spent the evening watching movies until about 1:30 a.m. During that time, Mika had been going in and out of the house several times. Apparently, someone was outside requesting her attention, but who that was is unknown. When her cousins went to bed, Mika was still sitting on the couch in the living room. However, when her aunt woke up the following morning, she found that Mika was gone and the front door was unlocked. Missing along with her were her purse and jacket, but her overnight bag, clothing, and all of her other belongings were still there. She did not own a cell phone. Because of her age and history of sneaking out, police initially assumed she was a runaway and didn't conduct any searches. Conflicting reports led some agencies to list her disappearance date as December 28th or 30th, but we know for sure she was last seen at 1:30 a.m. on December 29th, 2008. In the months before her disappearance, Mika had been caught with a fake ID that she used to enter local nightclubs. On one occasion, Mika's mother saw her getting into a dark-colored car with a much older man. Police have never identified him, but they believe he may have information about her disappearance. Years later, while moving houses, her family found a notebook filled with notes she had passed to a friend several months before she vanished. These messages mentioned that Mika had a boyfriend and might have been pregnant, as well as her feelings about not wanting him to have power over her. Police later interviewed this boyfriend, but no new leads came from it. Her friends also provided little helpful information, and some parents in the neighborhood even refused to let their children become involved in the investigation. Mika was known to spend time in East St. Louis, Illinois, which is about a 22-minute drive from Berkeley. Her mother has said she fears Mika may have been lured into a dangerous situation, possibly involving trafficking, but there is no evidence to confirm this. Some believe Mika left voluntarily with someone and planned to return, but something may have prevented this. Others think she may have left on her own and did not intend to return. There are also those who believe she is now deceased. Mika stood 5 feet 5 inches tall. As time has passed, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children showing what she might look like at 31 years old in hopes of generating new leads. If you have any information about the disappearance of Shemika Cosey, contact the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children at 1-800-THE-LOST or 1-800-843-5678. Any information could help. Mika went missing on December 29, 2008, and as of January 2026, she remains missing, and this case remains unsolved.